Hi, I'm Andrew J. Mason, and I'm about to have a productive conversation with Mike Vardy.
Welcome to A Productive Conversation. I'm Mike Vardy, and this time around, I'm chatting with Andrew J. Mason. Andrew is a podcast producer, audio and visual content production maven. Well, is maven the right word? I don't know, but that's what he focuses on. He's got a rich experience spanning over 18 years in producing audio and visual content for shows like the Getting Things Done podcast that, David Allen Company did, the Omni show. I've been on his podcast, The Pro Guide, which I highly encourage you to check out. You'll be able to do that via the show notes, of course. He has a passion for amplifying messages that matter. He's also has experience in hosting events for top tier brands. Now, he initiated his journey into podcasting with his first podcast in 2009. And that eventually grew into the popular podcast that we're talking about called The Pro Guide. So we dive into a variety of things. It's really just a productive conversation centering around productivity. We talk about coffee, the Keurig versus the pour over. We talk about getting things done and so much more. So let's get into it. My conversation with Andrew J. Mason. Enjoy. Andrew, thank you so much for joining me today. This has been an episode that we've been trying to get done for the past few weeks, although no one needs to know that. Although I'm sharing it anyway. This is kind of like, and anyone who's listened to the show before, it's very much like, and we talked about this off the top, it's us getting together with a cup of coffee or a beer or whatever your libation of choice is, and just having an organic conversation and a productive one at that. And if there's anybody that I've noticed in the podcasting space that not only gets involved with the making of and treatment of and producing of podcasts, it's you, but you also are uniquely tied to podcasts that have a productivity slant attached to them. So I'd love for you to share not only like some of those shows that you work on that people may have listened to before, but also what drew you to those particular types of podcasts.
Yeah. Oh my gosh, Mike. First of all, thanks, for even having me on the show. It's an honor just to be able to chat with you in this way. Yeah, I think we both talked about coffee. We got some coffee rolling. Very excited about that. The intensity of our conversation may increase as the conversation goes on. But so for me, podcasts started back in 2009 when Steve Jobs held up an iPhone and said, "Hey, podcasts are a thing now." And a buddy of mine said, "Hey, you should do that." And that really was the beginning of it. I enjoy having conversations with people and finding out what it is that makes them tick and where the wisdom is that they have in their life that maybe they haven't really articulated themselves yet. For me, I think we had this conversation once or twice earlier. The moment when you ask a well-placed question for somebody and they hear coming out of their mouth something that maybe they haven't even said before themselves, but they know it's true and it's coming up in the moment for them. And you're able podcasts really for me is just an opportunity to have a free coaching session. So for the Pro Guide, that started in 2009. And that's conversations with thought leaders in business, technology, creativity, and productivity. And then in 2015, honored to be able to help produce and host the Getting Things Done podcast for the David Allen Company. And then in 2020, after the company disbanded in the US, they actually, that exact same day, switched over and jumped to the Omni show for the makers of OmniFocus and their productivity tools, and getting to talk to really cool people that get cool stuff done using that software. Everywhere from we've had Amazon robotics people using Gantt charts, all the way to the former CEO of Etsy using OmniFocus just to remind him to do daily tasks and stuff. So it's a blast. And I think for me, it's just being able to see all the different myriad ways that people tick and get things done. And GTD is a lens that I use for my particular productivity way of getting stuff done, but I think it's as varied as it is people. There's so many people and there's so many different ways that people are productive in their lives. And it's cool getting to hear one that might resonate with somebody when you have a conversation with them.
Well, and the interesting thing is, I think you've got people who are very literal about GTD, and then people who are more contextual about it, to pardon the pun, because contexts are a big part of GTD. But taking elements of various approaches, philosophies, frameworks, all of those things, and then applying it to your own lens, right? Because, I mean, we want to work and operate, subjectively towards objectives. We don't want to. That's actually what we do. So you and I could approach the same project knowing we want the same outcome, but how we get there is going to be different. Some marginally so, and some radically so. So it is interesting when I talk to people who have spent time looking at productivity, either from being immersed in it, like I have been, or Cal Newport, or Leo Babauta, or David Allen, versus those that are like, I'm not gonna say on the sidelines, not the right term. I'll say it, but it's like that are tangentially or adjacently involved, right? But that interest is there. So, I mean, when you were looking at, for example, the Omni show, and OmniFocus is I years ago, actually, I think I'll find this and put it up, is when they released OmniFocus 2 at Macworld, rest in power, Macworld. It was me, Merlin Mann, David Sparks, all of us were presenting it. And there's that video. I'll find it. It's old. And OmniFocus 2 is now, I don't even know what release they're on now at this point, because I've gone more wide with
4 just came out.
There you go. There you go. David would know. David and I still chat about this stuff. But with the work that you do, because there is, when it comes to audio work in particular, there is both, I would imagine, sequential and parallel tasks that need to take place. And that's, to use some parlance inside of OmniFocus, but also just in general when it comes to working on projects. How has leaning into productivity practices, for lack of a better term, helped you with that work that you're doing? Like, what are some of the things that you didn't think leaning into that area would help you with what you actually do for work and in life in general?
Yeah, it's kind of a meta question, but it's kind of something that I think speaks to, it's an accessible question for everybody. And I think everybody has felt the feeling of, man, I'm not doing as much as I want to with my life, unless you're completely zen and happy with the way things are going always. But somewhere, somehow, people have this itch to want to do more, be more, have more, become more. Something shows up where there's a delta between where I am and where I want to be. And the difference between that delta, I think for some people is this, okay, I need to know something. What do I need to know? It's the whole Stephen Covey, you don't know what you don't know kind of a thing. And I think that once you start to learn, okay, here are the things that I need to do, and maybe it's as rudimentary as, let me just, do a task list and check the things off when I get there. I think we all need some form of bookmarks that help reinforce that we're making progress in some meaningful way. And so, however that's structured, I think being able to feed back to ourselves, being our own internal committee, saying, okay, Am I doing what I think needs to be done, and is it moving the needle closer or not? And being able to have that feedback, that conversation, it's almost like a management meeting with yourself. When it comes to podcasts, for me, I think you start doing some things repeatedly enough in any area of life, it starts to get relegated over to either muscle memory or mental muscle memory. And
Mm.
so I do have a template I use, and it is granular. I mean, there are sections, and don't forget to post to Twitter, and make sure that this snippet is cut out for YouTube and all of those sorts of things. But really, I think at the end of the day, all it helps you serve or helps serve you with is, if I get interrupted, if life's flow comes at me and I need to switch my focus and go to something that, we were just talking about, and life comes at you fast and latest and loudest, and all sorts of things show up. If something derails me from what I was currently working on, do I have a bookmark that I can look at and place my eyes on and say, here's where I was in the secrets, and get me back into that flow state that much quicker? I think whether it's podcasting, whether it's, remembering your grocery list, having something that gives you that mental bookmark is a really helpful way to help you offload a lot of those CPU cycles in your brain that I don't know necessarily that we're meant to hold inside all the time.
Wow.
What's your take on that, though?
No, I mean, I believe your mind is meant to be a factory, not a warehouse. That's what I've said many,
Yeah.
many times. And I think that the tricky part is when you're dealing with templates and repetitive work, is to know that there will be nuance. It's better to, as far as I'm concerned, when you've got a template, and we have this for our own podcast and anything we really do, is we tend to overdo it with the tasks on there. And then it's easier to cut because you don't have to think about the stuff. So for example, in our podcast template, we use ClickUp for this. But you could use any, Todoist, OmniFocus, it doesn't matter. We have confirm book arrival as one of the tasks. Well, Andrew, do you have a book that would have arrived for me to look at? No,
I do not.
Right,
No.
right. So I look at that template, and I can immediately, and this is where I think the dopamine kind of can help you, is I can go, oh, well, this doesn't apply, this doesn't apply, this doesn't apply, this doesn't apply, check, or archive, or delete, whatever you want to do. It doesn't really matter.
Mhm.
I know some people will be like, well, you didn't do it. I'm like, well, does it matter? Like, I don't think it matters if I check it off or delete it. Like, it really doesn't. I mean, I tend to delete it because, I do want to have that. Yeah, there's a truism to me going, oh, well, I didn't need to confirm a book arrival. So, but
Right. Was this accurate? Yeah.
right. But what's your tolerance? I talk about this a lot, like in the idea of productiveness, like precision and accuracy, like all those terms are nuanced. For me, it's more about tolerance. Like, what's your tolerance level of done? What's your tolerance level of what this looks like? And I'd much rather have that messy first draft of a template that stays as that draft. You know what I mean? Like everything could be on it, and then go, oh, well, this person, they're not on Facebook, so I may not use that one, or I may change the date or whatever. Oh, wow, this is a live stream. Okay, well, what if we should add that to the template, because we want to make sure that, anytime there is a live stream, I don't have to think about the stuff that might need to happen. I'd rather just think about, oh, this isn't a live stream, delete, right? But I think a lot of people, when they build the template or they build this repetitive process, they go, well, that's the template. And then they don't, again, maybe take time. And this involves literally, in most cases, just adding a task to your list to go review podcast template. And just to make sure that there's nothing missing, right? And
That's right.
so to me, there is this dynamic element that you can't ignore, you can't escape, and yet we constantly try to find static in the dynamic. We try to find the certain in the uncertain. We try to find the quantitative element in something that's purely qualitative, because it's just easier to measure, and you get that, again, you can still get the benefits of the check mark by having more there than what you need. And as long as it serves that purpose, I think that's huge.
Yeah, I think we talked, a little bit before this show about the idea of, building the form and then operating within the form once you've built it.
Yep.
And building that iteration into the process is really important, because if you never look at it again, just purely through the passage of time. I mean, we were having this conversation earlier about, like, just through the passage of time, the terrain on the last map that I have written has changed, and now I either need to make some new roads in my map, or find a new way to have this reflect reality a bit more. So that's a really crucial step, I believe, to make sure that you're as effective as possible. But I think some of it is just this desire to, we're so overwhelmed, we're so inundated, there's so much information, that any relief that we feel is just like, I don't have to think about that anymore. It's like, it's just this place of calm and peace where it's like, and in some ways, maybe it becomes, frankly, a little bit of laziness on our part to say, I've done that, I've thought about it, and now I don't need to think about it anymore. And that's not what I think you're saying. I think you're saying is, if you want to be able to benefit from the superpower of having something down on paper, even if you're operating loosely and using it as a place marker to figure out where you are in the process sequentially, it's still worth looking at that and updating it as just even the passage of time or circumstance shows up. But it's so funny to me how often predictable stuff really does still surprise us. Me too. Like, Christmas is coming again this year. What am I going to do?
Yeah.
It's like, I haven't built that checklist yet. I got to figure that out. And yet, without fail, even though I see it coming and it's far away and it's closer and a bit more defined, and now it's like right in front of my face yelling at me, like, I need to do something about this. Let me ask you, what do you do with that when you find something that's like, you should have thought about it, but at that point it's too late? What do you start to go? Of course, you put out the fire first, but then after you put out the fire, what mode does your brain go into to think like, okay, this is what I got to do next to make sure that that doesn't bite me again?
I try to be responsive rather than reactive. So
Hmm.
I think there's a nuance and a care to responsiveness that reactivity to me is, it's knee jerk to a degree, because it almost has to be, right? Like, oh gosh, I got to take care. Like, you encounter, like where I live in British Columbia, we have cougars, or mountain lions, as some might call them. And if you come across a cougar, you want to react, not respond, right? Like, you need to, but in order to be prepared for that, and I've seen several videos, and there's lots of, I mean, again, in our part of the world, they tell you, like, here's what you should do if you come across a bear or a cougar or whatever. By looking at that in advance, it allows me to react with more confidence and more competence than I would otherwise. So to have that information in a situation like where I'm forced to react because something unexpected shows up, which does happen. I will take care of it. I will put out the fire, as you put it, although I'm very careful not to use the term firefighting, because, and I have a lot of people that come to me and go, oh man, I spent all my day putting out fires. I'm like, so what do you let burn? And they're like, what do you mean? I'm like, well, a firefighter will let things burn so they can actually, like that. Like, if you say, like, are you just spraying willy nilly? Like, what are you doing? They're like, oh no, I'm just like, but I'm like, yeah, well, if you're looking at a fire, I mean, is it a grease fire? You're not going to throw water on it. Like, you know what I mean? Like, every fire is different, right? So when someone kind of uses that phrasing, I'm very careful to go, well, first off, how'd the fire start? Secondly, like, what kind of fire is it? And they're like, well, there's a whole bunch of different kinds. I'm like, exactly. So I will deal with the situation at hand. And then I will immediately go, okay, how do I cut this off at the pass in the future? First off, can I? If I can't, then I'm okay. And it's often, when that happens, it's often because it involves another human. And you cannot control humans' behaviors, right?
That's right.
But what you can
worry about it too. That's
right. An example of something that I would have to react to is, let's say I get a text message from my mom, right? During this episode. And it's like, oh, she's a favorite in my contacts. Well, that's why I got through. And and literally the message was, do you have time to talk? Well, first off, there's so much in there that I don't even know what's going on. Secondly,
That's right.
so I would in this moment go, Andrew, can we take a beat for a second? And I would go, what's it about? I would text going, what's it about? Oh, I just want to chat. Okay, well, I'm working right now. I'll get back to you later. And then what I would do is I would make a note going, adjust do not disturb or focus block to remove, like, it's just my wife that should be able to get in touch with me or my kids. That would be,
Sorry, Mike's mom.
yeah, sorry, mom.
Yeah.
But most
Sorry, Mom.
often it's tech support, so you'll have to wait. I can't find the home button on my new iPad. There is no home button on your new iPad. But
Sorry.
but I think the key is, and sometimes it's nothing, like, but I go from, and I talk about this a lot, is every action is preceded and followed by some form of reflection. And that reflection can take place in a really short period of time, which is a reaction, or
Hmm.
it could take place over a longer period of time, which is a response. But we don't spend enough time in that reflection phase. And when we hear reflection, often people will say, well, reflection, that's long and drawn out. No, not really. Reflect can be really short. Like, to reflect on something is literally like you giving it a bit of attention
Hmm.
for a period of time. Now, the depth of that attention, the layers, that changes it, right? Like, so there's nuance there. But I will look at that and go, okay, is there something I can do to mitigate? And sometimes I won't, when I'm writing something down, it won't be, here's the solution. It'll be like, figure out how to cut this off at the pass later, or decide or contemplate, like those softer words. It's the same thing like in Todoist, which I use for personal tasks. I'll have like decide when to put up Christmas decorations. And that happens the third week of November. Even though I'm Canadian, I do look at like Thanksgiving in the US as kind of like a bellwether for that. Mainly because I don't want Christmas decorations going up before our like military holidays, like Remembrance Day and stuff like that. But also, it doesn't mean I'm doing it on that day. Like on the Saturday following American Thanksgiving, I get a task that's in Todoist that goes, decide when to put up Christmas decorations. And then I'm like, oh, I'll do it this Saturday. Then I have a task in Todoist that says put up Christmas decorations, but it's got like whatever a year from the last date that I did it, like every 52 weeks. So if it's like, oh, I'm not going to do it then. Like if it said, let's say last year I decided to do it on the 8th of December. Well, now December 8th is not a Saturday, which is when I do family oriented things. That's what my daily theme is. So I'll go, oh, well, what's the first Saturday? Oh, that's a Saturday. Okay, so I'll just change the date. And then, of course, because it says every 52 weeks, the next year, I've made the decision, check. So 52 weeks later, hey, decide when to put up your Christmas decorations. Oh, I'm going to do it Saturday. Oh, it's a different date. I just changed the date. So to me, like, I don't think enough people put in their to-do list, like, think about, decide when. It's always like, do, buy. Like, it's that you need to take that very precise action. Whereas for me, there's that tolerance of like, I don't need to put up Christmas decorations on the third Saturday of November. But I don't want to wait until I drive past someone's house on December 12th and go, oh, right, I got to put up Christmas decorations. Oh, right, I got to put up Christmas decorations, right? So it's those little things. I don't want to have to think about it. Again, that mind is a factory, not a warehouse, right? And so when something like that happens, yes, I'll deal with it, but then I will make a note of how do I respond to this in the future so that I'm being reasoned with my approach to it, as opposed to too emotional or too logical. I want to have that middle.
That's it. And the guardrails between the two, because we tend to think that, oh man, it'll be all logical. And then like a robot, I'll do it on the right time when it shows up for me again. And then very often I'm just not in the mood, to have that thought or do that thing.
Yeah.
I love David Sparks' treatment of it. He says, I think he calls them nudges. It's just a nudge, a brain nudge in the right direction that maybe wouldn't have occurred otherwise for another 3 weeks when you are driving by the person's house saying, oh, shoot, maybe I should put up some decorations or something.
Right. Well, we talked about that with triggers, right? We talked about before we hit record, like the idea that my daughter's now off at college. Well, that triggered, that's a nudge, as David would put it, to go, it's not a nudge to do anything in that moment. It's a nudge of, oh, well, she's in college. In 5 years, my son will be in college. This is how I feel right now about my daughter being gone. Oh, there's like this gap. Not I mean, I get to see her every day. If I want to Snapchat her, which is how you communicate with kids these days. If I want to snap her, I can chat with her today, right? but I also want to give her space and all that stuff. So, and that's another thing too, which I'll circle back to that. But the point is that I know in 5 years, at maximum, my son will be going through the same journey. That's provided that he, takes a gap year. He may not, right? Like my daughter did. But what does that look like? What does that mean? And so it's not like decide what to do with the next 5 years of your life. It's more like it's like, okay,
Yeah.
talk to my wife about what we're thinking about 5 years. Like tell her what I'm feeling. And I don't put that necessarily on my to-do list. I'm not going to tell my wife how I'm feeling about my daughter being away, but it's more like talk to Anne about what we may want to do when the kids are gone. Like just having that in there, because the other thing is by directing my attention in that way, it allows for those conversations to happen at a time that we're in that mindset, like set and setting. And then when my wife and I just want to sit and watch a movie, we're not sitting like, by the way, or when we're having dinner, by the way, we should think of like it puts us in the right frame, right? And those nudges I think are really important, because at the end of it all, like that's, if we ignore those, then there is a chance they could come back to bite us later when we're not ready. We can't respond. We end up reacting, right?
That's it. That's it. And I love the what is it, the reticular, idea where you want to buy a red car, you see a red car everywhere when you're looking for it and everything. I think that's all this is, the trigger, the nudge, that you have the question planted in your head, and for the next 3, 6 days, weeks, whatever, as you're walking around with opportunities, you see, oh man, this is the perfect time to have that conversation. But had you not see that show up in your system before from previous thinking, who knows how long ago that was, but it came into your system, you now see it, you're thinking, okay, I'm looking for the right opportunity. We're singing in cafe. It's a beautiful day. We have space and time for this conversation. We both have good energy. Now's the time to bring that up. Let's have the conversation.
Yep. And again, once you create enough neural pathways to that, like every Sunday, my wife and I have this, what we call the effing meeting, which is food, finance, fun, and family. And I also call effing because no one likes meetings, right? But the F's have purpose, right? And so, to me, it puts you in the right position.
Sorry.
No. And that's, it's meant to elicit a lot. Remember, I started out too in productivity parody early on. Like that was my bread and butter earlier on, right? So for me, I want to try to make this fun and light. And because time and space is what we live in, right? We live in time. We live in space. I don't like the term time management any longer, because when you spend enough time in that space, you realize that we aren't managing time. We are managing our relationship with time. Time will last after we're gone, and time will be here before we get so the goal is to, be a partner with time as we make our way through it. And that's why I don't like the term productivity anymore, because productivity centers around activity as opposed to like this state. And I'd rather be, like you said, oh, we're in this place now. This is the setting and the set. Like I am every Wednesday, podcast day, I am in this state of working on this one area, productiveness. The problem, I think, is when you try to do, number one, too much. So you're being inhumane or trying to do inhuman things when you're human. And the world conspires, like you mentioned, like all these things vying for our attention. We have to be our own agents of that. Like we have to say, I'm not what I need to know what is going on to a degree. So the timely, but there's timeless stuff that I need to make sure that I move forward. Like there are timeless stories, timeless things. And that's why if you balance your kind of what you take in with both this, here's the timely stuff and here's the timeless stuff, that's almost as great a balance as you can get in terms of, quantity and quality and things of that nature. It depends on your goals too, right? Like we're sitting here drinking coffee. How'd you make your coffee?
Pour over.
Right. Same. What'd you have? A Hario V60, a Chemex? What'd you use?
Honestly, just an old pitcher.
Right. So you've got,
do
you have other implementations that you make coffee with, or do you just do pour over? Do you have other, like, do you use the AeroPress?
Right now, just do pour over. No, just pour over.
But why do you do pour over? Why? Because you could just get a Keurig, right?
I had a Keurig for a while. Actually, it's interesting. Had a Keurig for a little while, and then saw like all the video footage where like the lines get all gummed up, and it's just awful. And the environmental impact of it all.
What about an espresso? What about an espresso? Again, same thing. higher quality coffee, you could argue, but
Yeah. Yeah.
Nespresso.
No, I think I just went simple. I'm like, you know what? This is a caffeine delivery / cultural connection method for me. This will work.
Now that's
You know, like you said.
interesting to me because
Yeah.
I would have assumed, and again, this is why it's important to have these conversations, that the reason you did pour over is because of the ritualization, because you like coffee so much, because you want to
Mm,
have the best experience with as many cups as you can, and you want to get better. Like I have a really nice grinder and I'll dial it in. Mike Schmitz, who I know you know of as well,
yeah.
obviously him, Mike and I are both coffee nerds. Like Mike has, like we geek out about that stuff. And this cup was made in a pour over using a Hario switch, which is what I use. I have a recipe that I follow, but I also have a Hario V60 and I have a Chemex and we have an AeroPress. And I would love to get a, what do they call it? A Bialetti, a mocha pot. Like I want to try different types because for me, yes, I love a good cup of coffee and there's coffee I'll throw out. Like I bought bags. I'm like, ugh, I now know I like a medium or light roast. I like all these things, but why I would assume that people
Mhm.
who buy and use Keurigs and drip and all that in my head, because I'm so into this, it's like for them, it's a caffeine delivery device. I just want the coffee so
Yeah.
I can go. But you've told pour over, which is not a quick process per se. It's not
Mm,
something that's instant. I would have assumed that you did it because, oh, I really want a nice, there's the ritual aspect. There's this, there's that. But for you, you just said, I like the caffeine. It's a way I get it. And so to me, that kind of crumbles. What it does is it dispels the story that I had around it, which
yeah.
you can do one of two things with. You can go, huh, Andrew, what an idiot. He's doing it wrong, right? Like, but I could, right?
This could be the case, folks. I'm
No,
sorry.
no. But my point is that
Yeah.
I believe the response would be like, wow, what that's that assumption.
It's interesting.
What other assumption? Like, so have I made that assumption? Like, it's not like I'm beating myself up, but I'm like, wow, it puts things into perspective, which we
Yeah.
definitely touched on before we hit record, where it's like, okay, so I I'm coming from a place of curiosity more than judgment, right? Like,
Yes.
will, the old Ted Lasso, be curious, not judgmental quote, which apparently was not attributed to Walt Whitman, apparently. Yeah, apparently it's not a Walt Whitman quote, despite it being in the story. For those spoiler alert that have seen Ted Lasso, he alludes to it. But I am what I take from this conversation, from this piece of the conversation,
Mm.
is in my head, I still have the tendency to go in certain areas. Well, he's using a pour over. That must mean it's this. Oh, it's not?
Mhm.
Oh, I'm not judging you out of the gate. I'm curious. Like, that's interesting to me. Like, maybe not everybody, maybe people just like the AeroPress. My wife
Yeah.
makes an AeroPress every morning. And she's like, she doesn't care about the grind. She doesn't care about any of that. She likes to sit and have her coffee and enjoy it. But and it took me a while to get her to use the AeroPress. Like for a long time, she's like, I want to drip. But she now, like, if the AeroPress was to, like, she loves it, which is still a
Yeah.
form of pour over to a degree, right? So to me, I think that's an example of we come into a situation with preconceived notions, and we do that a lot in a lot of areas of our lives. And then at the end of it, it's like, oh, well, there's no right way. There's no one way. And why am I trying to short circuit the nuance that exists in the world? Because this is an example of that.
I have to say thank you actually, because while you were kind of talking through that, you have done for me what I just said was one of my favorite things as an interviewer. So from one interviewer OG to another, thank you so much for that gift. I feel like the reason for that, I'm like, yeah, well, why is that really? Is not because yes, there is the caffeine delivery mechanism, but there's also, I think, underlying for that. Um, I I don't do it because I don't like it. I probably don't do it because I would like it too much, and that's a rabbit hole I don't think I'm ready to go down right now.
Yes, it's like me and
So
espresso. It's like I don't want to buy an
it,
espresso machine because that's a bridge too far.
it's video games.
Yep.
Grew up playing video games, and then at early 20s said, "Hey, this is not helping my life out a whole lot. It's not because I don't like them. I like them too much. So let's put some guardrails around that." And now I'll play them, with my children during the time that they're playing video games and stuff. But those are the guardrails that I've set around that behavior so that I can continue to be productive in my life in the way that I feel like is meaningful for me at this moment. And that might change over time. So yeah, that probably is a rabbit hole I'd go down. But I have a feeling once I go, it's gonna.
So here's a question.
There's no turning back.
The video game. When did you?
Yeah.
Can you pinpoint the moment where you said, "Yeah, I got to change my relationship to video games"?
Yes, yeah. So I was renting out a room from actually from our pastor. So our pastor at our church, he was he used he's very kind, but he used behavior modification through embarrassment. And so I played a lot of video games. He's like, "What are you doing with your life up there? Like, are you gonna come down here and be like a productive adult with the rest of us, or what? So like, talk to me here." And it was just, it wasn't, judgmental, but just over time, just little bits of that conversation. I'm like, why am I doing this?
Yeah.
I could be doing so many other things. And each time I'd come downstairs out of the room, I'd see he's like reading a good book or, having a really healthy conversation with somebody. I'm like, gosh, this is what I'm missing out on right now. And it's because I'm filling my time with other stuff. So it's just like, it's the big rocks. I don't have any big rocks throwing into the jar, and I'm pouring in a bunch of sand right now. So let me think about how to adjust that. And so for me, that, the most healthy behavior was just say, you know what, it's not serving me in a way that I'd like to be served right now. So I may revisit it. It's not hard and fast. It's not like this is, the way I'm going to be forever and ever. But for right now, it's like it makes the most sense.
So I'll tell you my story, because again, yours was like there were cues that showed up that seemed to be consistent and persistent. For me, the relationship changed to video games, because I do play video games from time to time, but not very often anymore. And most of them are sports games, so that there's a definitive end. Because there's a lot of games that, like, I bought Elden Ring and I've barely played it. I bought Baldur's Gate, barely played it. Like, and as a kid, I played Bard's Tale and beat 99 Berserkers like constantly. So I'm dating myself here. But I mean, I would play those games, pro wrestling games, which I do own a couple of pro wrestling games, because I mean, there's, I am a wrestling fan. I make no secret of that. But there was this game that came out in 2005. Yeah, 2005. Well, what year is it? Yeah. So 2004, 2005. And it was called Star Wars, Knights of the Old Republic. And I had a Windows machine at the time. And my wife was pregnant, very pregnant. And I was playing this game. And it was a role-playing game. And I love Star Wars. And I was trying to finish the game. And my wife started to go around the house one night, and she was tidying up and cleaning up. She goes, I feel off. Like something's happening. I'm like, all right, whatever. I was being compassionate, but I was, also playing. So we would do our stuff. And it wasn't like I was sitting in front of the computer playing the game when we had this conversation. But when she would go to bed, I'm a night owl, I would play the game. And she said before she went to bed, she goes, I think you might want to go to bed like at a normal time tonight, because I think something's going to happen. I'm like, oh, okay, sure. I did not. I played Knights of the Old Republic all night. And guess what happened?
Mike.
She went into labor.
Yeah.
So she went into labor, and I was exhausted throughout the whole process. But do you think that it would have been wise for me to say at any point during this process, oh man, I'm so tired, to my wife, who was going through? And so
yes, sir.
That night, or the next day, she gave birth to my daughter, Grace, and it was a C-section. And so she couldn't get up and do anything. So now I'm doing that stuff. And I remember walking around with my daughter in the hospital, and I'm like, yeah, I can't do that anymore. Like, I can't do that. So it was like, there was no like consistent cues, like those nudges that you were getting. For me, it was one big like shove of like, hey, if you keep this is not an isolated incident. If you keep doing this, like, and so again, very different ways to now. I mean, my son has a PS5 and an Xbox. We'll play game. Like, absolutely. I don't play them. Yeah. And honestly, I don't play with him very much because he's like, again, I'm the guy that grew up with Qbert and Altered Beast and like Sega Genesis and all that. So when he sees his games, he's like, I'm like, Dad, do this. I'm like, these are way more complicated. It's like Transformers toys from back when I was a kid, like 10 steps to transform. And then the same Transformer now is like 38. And I'm like, which by the way is a generational thing. It's consistent. Like, my parents probably felt the same way about my toys, right? So
this is also the reason I'm playing Mario Kart while I can, because I know there's a limited time span on that.
Oh yeah, like Fortnite, I sucked at like the SNL sketch where Adam Driver's playing Fortnite with kids and he's running against the wall and doing I'm like, yeah, that would be me. But so it's interesting that the way we learn those things, the way we and you don't get them unless, number one, and we talked about it, like you have to have an open mind. Like I think we approach things, and again, I'm being very general, and for those that don't approach things this way, that's fine. But there's a sense of, this is the way that I've always done it, so this is the way it should be done, or this is the way someone else did it, so if I do it this way, I'm going to get the same result, et cetera, et cetera. So we go in with this myopic view, whereas, and I mean, I went into that night with, well, if she goes into labor, then I'll just quit soon. I'll stop playing in a bit. Didn't. There was always something, right? Like, oh God, I'm going to the next level. Even though there's a save option. And there's that, like, there was that reward factor that comes along with, which is why you kept playing, which is why I kept playing. And you eventually realize, and this over time, you realize the wisdom of you can stop. You can, like, it doesn't mean you have to give it up wholesale, but you just need to approach things in a reasoned way. If you let logic rule you too far, then you become like, there's that myopic element in that regard. If you become too emotional, then you're almost reckless, like you're scattered, right? Reasoned approaches to things, which often involves the middle, which is messy and nuanced, which I've alluded to many times on this podcast before. And it's certainly not sexy. The middle is not like a place where you can go, where you can pinpoint, hey, guess what? That's why tolerance lives in the middle. When you are going through your day to day, as we get close to wrapping up here, how open are you with all the years that you've spent like looking at productivity to just letting the day go the way it goes and respond in a way that makes sense to you, while also making sure that the platitudes that we hear, such as live for today because tomorrow isn't guaranteed, or, like all of those things that we are bombarded with, get your email to inbox 0, check off as many boxes as you can, quantity over quality, which we alluded to in the interview we did on your podcast, which we'll link to in the show notes. Like, how do you keep that stuff at bay while knowing that, the dynamics of each day can wreak havoc with everything that we kind of set out to do?
Yeah. Who hasn't had one of those days though, where it's like, it was one of those days for sure. So my wife and I, we have 3 kids, and
you're outnumbered. See, that's immediately.
I think redefining and sometimes you do hold on to things too tightly, and instead of allowing life to shape you, you break yourself against it, if that makes sense. So we talked about, forming the cup, and you make your forms and then you operate within them.
Yep.
And sometimes I think you got to make sure that the clay on the cup that you've molded is still a little bit wet so that it can like change shape here and there. So there are times where, you set the bar so that you can win regardless of what the day looks like. And so my encouragement to all the new parents out there, my gosh, sometimes just making it through the day, just, making sure teeth are brushed and pajamas are on and all of those things that's the win. You know what? Find the win in that. Maybe not using the term zoom out, but using the term of widening the lens or providing additional context. Context, I think, gives meaning sometimes. When we are so focused on, man, I didn't check the things off that I really wanted to check off, widening that lens and getting some extra context to say, but yeah, I am on the planet and I am living a meaningful life. We had this conversation. We talked a lot before this.
We talked so many times before we actually hit record. We could have a whole audio program based on our conversations.
It's true though. I mean, maintaining that level of, if you want to call it gratitude or just awareness that there is so much more than just the box checking that you're trying to get. You mentioned to what end? I'm doing these things to what end? Well, I want to be productive. To what end? Well, because I want to feel like I'm providing value in this world. To what end? Well, I want to feel like I have a meaningful life. I mean, how far do you want to zoom it out before you start to say, you know what? It's going to be okay. Tomorrow's another day, and I'm going to be all right. So I think having that level of flexibility helps a lot. And I don't always have it. I mean, all of us kind of grab too tightly onto the thing that we feel like should happen, or get disappointed when the outcome that we were shooting for doesn't pan out the way that it should. But I think the difference is you acknowledge it. Like you said, you acknowledge that there's weeds in the garden. Tony Robbins always says, don't say there's no weeds, say there's weeds in the garden, pick them, and then, move on and have a great garden. So, acknowledge that, hey, the day didn't go the way that I wanted it to. Are there any things that I can do to trigger my thinking or move my thinking in the right direction moving forward? And if the answer is yes, then I learn, I think we're too hard on ourselves sometimes, me included. And being able to have just that extra little bit of grace is what's going to set you up for success faster, once you get back up.
Andrew, this has been a great conversation. I'm glad we recorded this one. For those that want to hear more of us chat, again, I'll link to our conversation on your podcast, the Pro Guide, in the show notes. But where can people keep up with the work that you're doing and learn more about you and connect with you?
Yeah. Grateful to have this conversation, Mike. Thank you again for having me on. Proguide.io. So PROGUIDE.io will take you to the YouTube channel where you'll find Mike's podcast with me. Also, smallpond.productions is my business where I do podcast production and media production. And if it has a screen or has audio, chances are I enjoy doing that. So this has been a blast, Mike. Thanks for having me.
Well, thanks for joining me for a productive conversation today. Thanks to Andrew for joining me on the program. You can check out all of the relevant links, show notes, bullet points, everything at mikevardy.com/podcast551 or wherever you get your podcasts. Cause see the Spotify app, Apple Podcasts app, even YouTube will illustrate some of those show notes. And while you're there, subscribe to the show. That way you won't miss a single episode of what's to come, including our regular Flashback Friday episodes, our monthly PM Talk series with my good friend Patrick Rohn, and a shiny new episode each and every week to go along with that. So that's one way to support the show. Subscribe wherever you get your podcasts. Another way to support the show is to check out the sponsors you heard during today's conversation. Go to mikevardy.com/podcast sponsors. Click on any of those that resonate with you, and that way they know that we sent you. That's it for this episode. Next time, we got a Flashback Friday episode coming your way. I know you'll get a kick out of that, so make sure you subscribe. And until next time, I'm Mike Vardy, the host of A Productive Conversation, reminding you to stop doing productive and start being productive. See you later.